Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Raw and Wild Hearts podcast. I'm your host and guide, Lori Rising, and welcome to today's episode called Uncensored and Energetically Free. Free! How good does that feel? So, there is a very clear path into this experience, and it is a path that has been suppressed and conditioned away from us for far too long. My guest today, the exquisite Jaclyn Shaw, who has her first book coming out next week, is blazing the trail on that path. Her and I come together in the divine meeting of souls, in the wholeness and truth of the God spark within. And I am giddy about this. We both lead in energetics and frequency. So I'm going to invite you to really let your mind rest. We're so good at consuming ideas and concepts and believing that's a part of our experience. And what I want to invite you into today is actually just feeling and receiving the frequency and the codes that are coming through in our vibration, coming through in the exchange and the transmission, and then embody it, live it, be it, have conviction in it. And that means take the action from it. Yes. Okay. So I can hardly wait to get you into this episode, but there's a couple of things I want to share first. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. Great episode to dive in and be initiated into. Make sure that you subscribe, you hit that like button if you're on YouTube, ding the little notification bell. It's so important that we support the creators that are showing up in this authenticity and the reminder of how empowered we truly are in this experience, because there's a lot of noise online and we have to keep being clear on what we want to hear more of by showing our support. If you're on a podcast platform and just listening to the vibe that's coming through, also subscribe. And if you feel support in any of my episodes, please consider giving me a star rating and review. It really does help in the algorithm, and it helps me to continue to show up to offer this free support for everyone. Now, I decided, I got the message that today for this episode, I'm going to do something new and fun. I have retired my channeled readings. They are channeled astrology readings and mentorship. And so many of you miss them. So I am going to give away two. I'm going to give away two. It's true. So there are two ways to be entered into these draws. The first is to give a star rating and review on the podcast. Take a screenshot and send it to me. You can email it to me. You can tag me on social media, however you want to do it, just so I become aware of it so I can add you into the draw. The second way is to share this episode and link with your community in any way and tag me. So you can take a little video of our conversation, a little boomerang. You can take a screenshot. Make sure you offer the link though, so they can get right into it. And then you will get right into this giveaway. So you have until October 31st, which is one of my favorite days where the veils are thin. And you have this great opportunity to remember your multi-realm self that came to share in this human embodied experience. So let's get to it, babes. Let's amplify. All right. Something else that's happening right now is that the doors to my online signature program channel are open. Yes, it just happened yesterday. And this is a 9-week experience where you show up in your life in a way that you didn't even know was possible because you hadn't been able to access it. This is where we go from the healing loop, from consuming ideas and concepts, to claiming the healed one and embodying that experience. This is where we start to live from the desire, the dream, the identity, and we magnetize it because we are now such a clear channel that we realize the control, stress, and hustle and expectation were only holding us back. So this is a 9-week expansion back into your evolutionary truth. If you are the one that's ready to invest in deep, lasting change, If you are the one that's ready to actually jump off the precipice that you've gotten way too comfortable on, channel is for you. Make sure you check out the link below or hit me up in the DMs because I would love to truly explore if this is the environment and experience for you. The doors are open for those that know what investment does, those that know that this is a way of life, and those that know the environment is everything. All right, babes, let's get into this episode. In a world of spiritual teachers, Jaclyn Shaw stands apart, a revolutionary force who doesn't just teach mindset, but masterfully orchestrates frequency shifts that transform lives. Revered globally for her extraordinary ability to pierce through spiritual veils, Jaclyn awakens women to the divine power they've always carried within. With a presence that commands attention and wisdom that resonates at a soul level, she guides women to hear their own soul voice. This isn't gentle spirituality. This is a radical divine remembrance. Please welcome Jaclyn Shaw. Hello, Jaclyn. Thank you for joining the Wild Heart Revolution.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Knowing the topic of this conversation we're about to have today, I am so excited to dive straight in.
You have me like Twitter pated. Whatever that means, that's what I'm feeling inside because it's like my heart is racing. I'm so excited. It's like I've been waiting to meet you since I remember sitting in that church pew when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I knew that God was within me. I knew that I was the divine. And when our paths have come to synergy together, I'm like, there another one. Like she's out there. She knows, she gets it. So Jaclyn, please just give us a little information, a little transmission, I'm going to say, about finding and reclaiming God.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I feel like, you said, how old did you say you were? About 6 or 7?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was young when I felt like I knew what God wasn't. And I was 11 or 12 when I'd grown up going to church every Sunday. I was 11 or 12 when I left the church because, and I remember saying to my parents, and I'm done with church because I did not at all resonate with the God that I was being taught about. And I didn't really know what that meant because I explored my own path and I stopped using the word God and explored spirituality and the universe and angels and all of this. And then there was this moment where I feel like I came back into connection of what I thought God always was. And so it does feel like a reclaiming of God when it felt like the divine essence within me and allowing God to move through me. And it was the shift of what I had been taught of like God being out there outside of me to that connection with the divinity within me, God within me, and knowing that I was truly never separate from God.
How old were you? Do you remember?
This was more recently in my life. This was in the past. Well, I call what I call my spiritual smackdown was 9 years ago, and it was probably, and at that time, still like God was not a word that I would use, and it was a year or two later,
Okay.
7 years or so.
I love what you just shared because it was coming up for me as well. And I was like, I think this is going to come up as we start to talk about the divine that literally is us. Like we are the divine spark. We are living divinity. We are little extensions of God is how I see it and how I've always known it to be. But there's also this moment where you see how you've been conditioned or reared. And there are many people that have stayed on that path and there are some of us that are like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel in alignment. There's like, for me, it was literally a body consciousness. My body was saying no. Like I would feel like I was being choked, even though I was trying so hard when I was, because I was so young. I came in as a star seed and I would sit in church and I'd be like, but I want to have faith. I want to believe this. And I would like pour my heart into it. I would sing the songs like at the top of my lungs and I would say the words. And then suddenly it was like, wait a second, these words don't feel right to me. There had to be this separation of what I knew God to be in that moment and what I lived as in my body. And so, what you're talking about, how you let go of what the God that you knew, and you went through this whole, I don't know, we could call it even like this void or this process, this exploration to come back.
Yeah, and what I'd say, like even this wording that you say, like the God that I knew, the thing is I don't feel like I ever really knew God before because it actually felt, and without knowing it when I was a kid, like I wasn't what you're describing there. Like I actually have, I mean, I know I went to church every Sunday. I have kind of vague memories, but I don't actually have any memory of really like what I was taught because it's like I almost just rejected it all back then. So I don't feel like I knew God until I like knew God in the way that I now experience God because the God that I was being taught about, it never vibrated as truth within me.
Yeah. You know, what I found really interesting as I grew older and I looked back on my childhood is I lived near a church. And so I would sneak into the church when I was a kid when nobody was there. And that was God to me. Like I could feel the divinity, I could feel the faith, and people weren't messing it up. Right. And then I'd get in trouble for sneaking into the church and all of the things. But that was so telling to me that it was something that I needed to know and express for myself. And you are, if this just happened like 9 years ago for you in your physical reality, you are on like a fast freaking track. Like you literally ooze the essence of God. The way that you say God in such a belief and in such a foundation, I feel like it rocks the world.
Yeah, and I always like there was always something that I believed in outside of me, but I wouldn't label that something God because again, for me, God was connected to all these things that I didn't connect with, all these things that I didn't believe. And so, there was a lot of the things that I talk about too. There was I call it toe dipping. Like I was toe dipping in and out for almost my whole life. And I was always, you know, open again, like prayed to angels, like spirit was, universe, all of this. And until I actually remembered who I am as a divine being, remembered that God's from within me. I mean, it was toe dipping. It felt like there for a moment and then gone. So it doesn't feel like the way that I now move. I now move with absolute like conviction and absolute knowing of who I am as a divine being, of who we all are as divine beings, of the creator that I am, that God literally God's from within me without you know, before it was like, again, always this outside. And so when I was praying, it was praying to something outside of me versus praying connection to the God within me. That's where it became the most powerful shift. And once that was experienced for me, I mean, like you said there, it's felt in my voice, it's felt in my energy, it's experienced because there's absolute unwavering knowing and conviction in who I am and who we all are.
Mm, that is so freaking yum. Like, I want that for everyone to have that moment
Too.
and that experience. That's the natural ecstasy that we came here to experience. And yay. Okay. So we started off with a bang. I'm going to roll it back a little bit. I'm going to introduce you to Jacqueline here, but I wanted to dive right into the God frequency because she literally lives the God frequency. And it's such a beautiful experience to have with her and be in her world. And so, I met Jacqueline in the flesh, in the person, or online, I guess I should say, when I became a part of Melanie and Layer's world. And this is a world where New Earth is being born. Like, this is a world where we are doing things from the divine within us. And we're doing them in a way that comes from faith, it comes from trust, it comes from feminine led energetics while wrapping that in the masculine structure. It's like wealth consciousness in its very biggest, brightest, and boldest ways. And so I got to meet Jacqueline through Melanie Ann Layer. And I got to know Jacqueline. Like I said, it was like mountains were colliding when I felt your frequency because it took me back to when I was a child and I felt so alone. I tried to leave this earth so many times because I couldn't see myself outside of me. I couldn't feel what I knew. Nobody was saying the things that I knew. I knew we could levitate. I knew we were divine. I would look around and I couldn't understand all these violent images and all this hatred and all this war. It didn't make any sense to me. And so then when I met you, I was like, oh, it makes sense. I mean, there's many things before that that happened that made more and more sense to me in this world. But I just feel really blessed that I get to share even a spark of what you are doing in the world, what you're offering in the world from your soul's medicine. And you have a book coming out, which is so exciting because what you're going to do with this book, I feel like is going to make massive waves, especially for women everywhere. So I would love you to share a little bit about your journey to what brought you here as an author, as a conduit of God.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. And I have not fully shared this in many spaces yet, but I don't have one book coming out. I actually have three books coming out. And so one that is fully written and is being published and is being released October 14th of this year. So like that one's done. And then I'm in the process of writing two other books simultaneously because I have deadlines for both of those books. And why I'm sharing that is because I do feel it's important in the context of what you're asking here. When you said the words conduit for God, I had an experience in my life that I call my spiritual smackdown. This is the title of my first book. It's a spiritual memoir. And there was a moment, like a very clear, defining moment where I felt God within me and I felt the words of God being spoken through me. There was two, what I call two events in the spiritual smackdown. It was like the first one was for you, meaning the first was for me, and the second one was for the world. And I knew in that moment that I was going to share this story. I knew that I was going to write this book. It did take me 8 years to write the book because I had gotten so deep in my head of forgetting that I'm a conduit for God. I forgot that I just get to be the voice of truth of who I am. And so for 8 years, I told myself, I'm not a writer. Like, who am I to write this book? I can't write this book. And then about 5 days before I finished writing the first book, all of a sudden the idea for the third book came in actually first. And then a couple weeks later, the idea for the second book came in. And those ideas came in after I had committed to being the voice of God, being the voice of truth, allowing myself to be so free in my expression and sharing my truth. Because the truth that I share in this book, so it's a spiritual memoir, so it tells the story, the experience of my spiritual smackdown. And I mean, it's very masterfully woven with wisdom of like where I stand right now and looking in hindsight in this journey that I've had and growth with connecting to the divinity with me and with the God within. And there's a lot of parts in the book that I will tell you, and I know this from people that have read it, that bring up that sacred rage that we have as women, that will not be comfortable for people to sit with at times. Where, I mean, the tagline's called From Victim to Goddess. You'll see where I wanted to like fall and where I did fall into victimhood, and then the rise of choosing the goddess energy and choosing to harness my power and choosing faith above all else and choosing forgiveness and choosing trust. Like there's, I mean, it is a whole journey. And I've been told by some spiritual teachers that what I share in the book is too shameful to be brought forth into this world and to be put in print for people to read. And the moment I heard those words, it actually brought me deeper into conviction of knowing who I am as a conduit for God. That amplified my movement, that amplified my desire to write because I believe as women, sharing our stories and sharing our truth in this way is our holy work. It is holy medicine. And so I came into this place of knowing when I speak the truth about who I am, who we all are, when I allow myself to be the vessel for God, some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it. And this has been a journey for me of honoring my truth above all else and allowing multiple truths to coexist. I don't require anyone to feel what I feel or believe what I believe. And yet my knowing is what's going to lead the pathway in all of these books. And through that, I invite the reader and other women to tune into their own sacred knowing. Each and every one of us holds the knowing within us, the sacred wisdom within us. And through women sharing their truth, that's what gets sparked, that divine remembrance. And so you're going to, if you read my book, you're going to have parts where you feel like you're right there with me and in resonance and like, yes. And there might be parts where you're like, actually, my truth feels a bit different. And I'm also perfectly okay with that because my desire is through everything I do, whether it's mentorship calls or my book or podcasts, is for each woman to reclaim their own truth, their own voice, their own magic, their own medicine.
And I mean, just the transmission alone is going to be sharing that in the frequency because there's a couple of things that stood out for me. The first is, you said, okay, it's 8 years later and I wrote the book, and also how it's woven with all this beautiful wisdom, and that wisdom unfolded over those 8 years. And so
Absolutely.
so when we can get more timeless, we actually get more empowered in those spaces. And you've done that just so beautifully, because that leads me to this next, like, what? Like, this is a like blow your spirit moment, because I've been a part of this. I've been listening to Jack in this journey. I've gotten kind of a inside seat in this experience. And when you had one of your spiritual mentors tell you that it's too shameful to put out the way that it is with your story, you freaking doubled down. Like, you're functioning on the frequency of not needing any validation. And this is huge because this is someone who is really big. I don't know if I want to say like big in the world of being able to like step you forward in really quick ways. And you went so much further into your own truth and your own path. Like, I want to hear just a little bit about this because it's so inspiring for so many people to receive.
Honestly, like hearing you reflect this back to me is making me feel emotional right now. Not because of the experience itself, but because I know what's to come from this, not just for me, but for the women I lead, for the lives that I touch, because I absolutely doubled down. And not only did I double down, I mean, I walked away from some very enticing opportunities that were available to me if I, decided to hide bits of the story and remove the pieces that were shameful. And I absolutely chose not to. I didn't even question in it. And at the time, it felt painful. It felt heartbreaking. It felt like there was things that I was promised that then ended up being taken away. And again, the tagline's from victim to goddess. So I didn't sit into victimhood of that. There was absolute faith and trust, but it also felt hard. And it felt, I mean, I was pouring tears when for 45 minutes was like very much trying to get convinced and influenced and had all these things like dangling in front of me of if I would just dilute parts and just leave parts out. And I just knew it would be such a disservice to me, to you, to the collective, to people who come into this space with me, because nothing is like this is my life. This is the story. This is the experience. Like nothing we live is too shameful, is not worthy of being heard, not being told. And if I was going to take out any part of that story, it feels like I was like ripping out the soul of the book. And also, I don't believe the wisdom would land as powerfully without the story. So I go into the depth of the story so people can take the depth of the wisdom. But this double down energy, I mean, not only did I decide I feel like this got bigger. I feel like this is actually what's going to amplify the readers of this book, that's going to get it in more hands than I could have even imagined possible because of that conviction I was willing to stand in, because I didn't hesitate or question my voice in this way. And I actually ended up adding this experience to the book because that's how important it felt. So it actually comes in at the beginning of the book and the end of the book. The rest of the book stayed the same, but it felt like an important experience to share, deeper than we're going here in its depth, because I know this happens for women all the time. We get told we're to this or to that, or shamed into silence, or just say it a different way, make it more comfortable for people. And again, sharing our truth is our holy work. And I was like so willing with this book to take a stand for that.
Mm. It's sexy. It's incredible. This is where you're really leading in frequency first. You and I both work in energetics. And so I really wanted to talk about this because I quoted you from one of your articles earlier, and I'm going to look at it right now. You said people feel frequency first. And to me, what's happening in this transmission is it's a living, breathing entity. It's not about business. It's not about playing safe. It's not about doing it the way everybody else has done it, which actually brings me back to part of your story that I listened to on your podcast. You didn't do it the way most people would do it. You didn't conform. You didn't feel the collective's energy and what they wanted for you. You got so clear in what frequency and energy was leading for you. So I wanted to just kind of bring these into this people feel your frequency first and how standing in the conviction of the frequency over the expectation or what you see in the physical world right now. This is what I'm talking about, the leadership that happens in these circles that you and I are both a part of. And you are one of the biggest leaders in this space. So please, I would love to dive into that if you're open to it.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for having this conversation and bringing these type of conversations forward because for me, they're literally everything. And when I say people feel frequency first, it means right now as you're listening, you're feeling an essence behind my words. You're feeling an essence behind Lori's words. And I will tell you, this experience created a shift in my voice, created a shift in my boldness, created a shift in that conviction of who I am. And so people feel frequency first means people are going to feel when you waver, when you're in doubt, when you're questioning, when you wonder, am I enough? Am I worthy? Should I have said that? Should I have not? Like that gets felt. And so we do ourselves such a disservice when we question who we are. So the most powerful thing you can do is commit to being the fullest expression of self and commit that I am because I am is enough. I know because I know is enough. And a lot of my journey and a lot of my work with women is harnessing their personal power to a place where they stand in an unwavering conviction of who they are, even when it's controversial, even when other people disagree, even when, there could be a fast track over here if you just follow somebody else's way or rules or whatever it is, strategy, like whatever you want, name it. Like your way is the way. And we've got to come into this place of divine remembrance of who we are as divine beings, as divine creators, and stop outsourcing everything. Stop outsourcing. And when I say outsourcing, I don't even mean like, the doing things, but outsourcing your wisdom, outsourcing your power, outsourcing. I mean, even for me, there was a time where I was outsourcing my connection to God because I wasn't tuned into the God within. So, like, that felt like outsourcing who I am as a spiritual being.
Yeah. And so, do you feel like when you had this spiritual smackdown, when this experience really showed up in your life, that I feel like you kind of answered this before, but do you really feel like that was a moment that opened the door to God in a way that maybe without the experience you would not have found, or the path would have been different?
Absolutely. Like, honestly, two of the experiences in my life that I would say that I am the most grateful for is my spiritual smackdown. And it is this experience that we've just been talking about where, let's say I was tried to be silenced. And those are not, when I say two of the moments the most grateful for, that's not the birth of my children. That's not the day of my wedding. And obviously, like those were massive experiences in my life that I'm so grateful for. But these two experiences that we're talking about took me into the divine remembrance of who I am. I would not be the woman that I am today. I would not lead the way I am today. I would not have the knowing of who I am, who we all are today without these experiences in my life. So, would it be great to not have those human experiences that were heartbreaking and hard? Of course. But from a soul perspective, like absolutely grateful.
Yeah, and so you had the first one, and then let's fast forward to 8 or 9 years later, and you had this next one. So do you feel like you had such a deep foundation between the first and the second that there may have even been a part of you that welcomed this next one, even though it was hard, even though it was painful, even though maybe you felt feelings of betrayal, like all of the depth of the shadow that came up? Did you feel like you had a different sense of like ability to move through it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the first experience, I mean, like I said, from victim to goddess, and I journeyed and I went back and forth and I wavered and I questioned. And this was really the time of my spiritual awakening and where I, you know, started to understand concepts like surrender and faith and forgiveness. And I mean, through that experience, there was a big part of this experience was seeing where I made things about me. And that's been a whole journey of unraveling over the last 8, 9 years. And so with this experience, it actually just immediately felt like it was there for an up level for me, that it was an experience where I got to choose like who I'm willing to be in light of this. And again, it felt like this is here amplifying everything because, like I said, like my voice sounds different than before that. I Even though I knew like the power, I knew I was meant to write this book. I knew the power of this book. I knew that it was going to reach women and touch women and be healing and connect women. And I feel like I was in the space of like, and whoever it touches, it touches. And now I'm like, no, like this needs to be in the hands of every woman. Like this is so important. And so it definitely amplified. It's just like, it stopped me from just like playing comfortable to like full expansion. Let's go. Like, no fucks given.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. All the yes to that. So, this podcast is called Uncensored and Energetically Free. And this is going to lead me to something else that I've heard you quote. And it really spoke to me when you said this. This was the moment where you were talking about your spiritual smackdown on your podcast. And you were going into such a vulnerable place and sharing so vulnerably. And you said vulnerability invites vulnerability. And the one thing that this, I'll just say this collective or this culture has wanted is for us to fear vulnerability. And so this is one of the most powerful embodied like experiences that I feel like we can say yes to in our life. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what it took for you to step into that vulnerability because so many people will be scared of reactions, of judgment, of what's happening outside of them, even in their families, right? Like this is huge for you to share this story with your family supporting you in that space of vulnerability. So I feel like it's going to be a great thing for us to hear more about how that's come through for you.
Well, I will tell you, I was in a complete space of avoiding vulnerability. Like the idea of vulnerability was like, I feel like I had an allergic reaction to it. I remember actually during my spiritual smackdown, I was out for dinner with three of my girlfriends, and one of them was like, oh, like, thank you for sharing with us. Like, that was so vulnerable. And I got offended. I was like, I am not vulnerable. Like I literally took offense to her calling me vulnerable. And then one of the girlfriend that was like sitting beside me, she's like, well, like she means like strong vulnerable. She doesn't really mean vulnerable. And I was like, okay, good. And then the other third friend agreed. She's like, yeah, like the strong vulnerable. And like the friend who said it, she's like, no, I don't. Like I mean vulnerable. And three of us were there, like, because all three of us were like, vulnerability is like not good. That's not something to like, that's not a desirable quality. And yeah, like I just was like, oh gosh, well, I don't want to be vulnerable. And I had wore like being, strong and bold and badass and rebellious as this like badge of honor my whole life. And so this idea of vulnerable to me felt like soft, weak. And then I realized through my journey is this vulnerability. And when I say vulnerability meets vulnerability, vulnerability opens up the doorway. It's really like I just get to be fully who I am. I don't need to perform. I don't need to only let people see the bold side of me and this side. Like I can actually be exactly who I am. And on the other side of that, not make anyone's experience of me any of my business. And so one of the biggest, you know, pieces for me was when I first shared bits of the story of my spiritual smackdown. It was on a podcast that was it was either the top one or top two podcasts in Australia at the time. And it was a podcast that brought on like a lot of stories that could really anger people. And I mean, even a couple of years ago, like to that day, a couple of years ago, when I talked to the podcast host again, she was like, still, your podcast gets the most hate in my inbox still. And at that time, I mean, people publicly told me I was a disgrace to womanhood, like other things, like I can't believe that she leads other women, that other women would listen to her, like all of these things publicly. And then privately, I was getting all these messages of how much women resonated with my story and my words and how I gave them hope and how it was helpful. And I mean, this was an experience where I was very vulnerable and very open for the first time publicly. And again, it was almost a gift to have that judgment placed on me and to have these words thrown at me because I was able to so clearly see in that moment, it's not even about me.
Mm.
And so from there, it gave me actual like full liberation to be more of who I am. And that's what vulnerability has allowed me, like complete freedom in who I am, freedom in my expression of self, because it's taken away that thought, fear, worry of judgment from others. Like I've already lived it.
Mm. And then, when you're in that space of freedom where you're energetically free, you're available for the life that's trying to be channeled through you, right? Like that's what so many people are missing because they're in these entanglements and these worries and these stories, right? And what's really standing out to me, let's see if we can follow this thread, is that when you brought this invitational vulnerability in, and then you included this immediately afterwards, you said, and it's none of my business what anybody thinks or how anybody reacts. That to me is like this beautiful blend of feminine and masculine energetics.
Yeah, because like that for me is if I'm being the truth of who I am, people I mean, we're all here as soul beings, as divine beings, as human beings, and we're on a unique journey. And so the fact that someone doesn't resonate with my truth, the fact that someone feels a certain way about me, like when I say that's none of my business, I can hold on to that when I'm being the truth of who I am. If I'm being like a fragment of who I am, if I'm, just giving a little bit, well, then that judgment's probably going to sting more because I know I'm only being a part of me. But when I'm the fullest expression of who I am, when I'm not holding back, then I actually just trust like people are where they're at on their journey. And I don't need to convince them that I'm right and they're wrong or they're right and I'm wrong. It's like, again, multiple truths get to coexist. And so I allow people to have their own journey, their own, like, I don't know anything about anybody else's soul journey, you know? And so it's like, can I allow you to have your journey and not need you to get mine, not need you to agree with mine.
I feel like I'm going to ask you a question that so many people are thinking right now.
Yeah.
Is there ever a time now in your experience, right? I want to say, like, at the level of ascension that you've arrived to, that you feel like you do still at times show up as a part of your wholeness? Or do you feel like it is always, no matter what, like you are in this vibe, you are in this frequency, you are always in your wholeness in how you're showing up? Because I feel like people will touch on it, they'll feel it, and then they'll like backtrack, and then they'll start having the stories or, the people around them start to affect them because we're energetic beings and we absorb energy all around us. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that will be really helpful and supportive for people to hear your process with that or how you feel like you've landed in that space.
If you asked me a year ago, I would say like probably not. I would say I thought I was showing up in my wholeness. I would say I felt like at the time I thought that I was fully showing up. I didn't see any parts of me holding back. And again, through this recent experience that I had with the book, that's where it really shifted. That's where it's really changed. And I can say from like absolute truth that I do not believe that lives in my energy field anymore.
How liberating is that?
Like, big time. Like took the like I am who I am frequency to a whole other level for me and also the way that I view others as well, which has been like that to me is such a gift.
That's it right there. You just said it. When you view others as that way as well, that actually gives you that sovereignty, that true sovereignty, right? I feel like the word can be thrown around a lot, but when you truly understand it, right? There's certain things that land in those foundations. And I feel like that's one of them. And also, another one that I feel like is really supportive in what we're sharing here is when you can actually move out of a default of scarcity into a default of abundance. You're no longer manipulating yourself or trying to manipulate anyone else because you know there's always more. There's abundance all around you. Do you agree?
1000%. Like, absolutely. I believe that we are limitless beings. We're divine beings. We're limitless beings. All exist because we exist. And we're the ones that create the interference. We're the ones that create the limitation in our energy field. And so when we can remove those limitations by standing in conviction of self, by committing to fully being who we are, I mean, more does become available. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what just came through was like the wobble, right? Because I feel like the wobble can still show up no matter where we have landed in this whole space of ascension or understanding, right? Even when we're leading with energetics or frequency. But the difference is how do you respond? Like how do you welcome it or how do you push it away, right?
Well, I think what happens for most people when the wobble comes up, they ask themselves the question why versus the question who. And who for me is the most more powerful question. So
Mm.
why is this wobble coming up? And then we go into the past and try to like do all this work and figure out why this is happening versus deciding who I get to be, who I'm choosing to be in light of this. And then that gets to spark the recoding of it. And so who, and I like to really remain in the ethers of now, who am I choosing to be? How am I choosing to perceive this? How am I choosing to look at this? What am I choosing to make this mean about me? And that's where things get to shift. And so I see it so often. The wobble comes in and then people shame themselves for the wobble and then they judge themselves for the wobble and then they make the wobble mean something other than, oh yeah, I'm a divine being, but I'm also a human being. I'm a human being having a human moment where there's a wobble or there's a doubt or there's a fear. Now what? Now who do I choose to be when there was the moment of wobble, fear, doubt? Do I go deeper in that? Do I then say like, oh my gosh, well, now I've messed this all up, and if I blah 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 blah, like all the things, or I'm like, oh yeah, like I always see the wobble, I always see that moment of doubt as an opportunity to go deeper into the remembrance of who we are. The forgetting who we are is not the problem. We literally came here as divine beings and human beings to forget who we are so that we can remember and experience. So when we forget, we can just see it as a sacred invitation to actually go deeper in our remembrance.
That is so powerful. I love it so much. I was just like, it was like you were taking me on this little journey. It was so fun. I hope everybody else had as much fun as I had on that.
We
And I
just did a little bit of a
landed.
twister. We just did a little bit of a twister there, but like that really is, it's like, what if we look at things as sacred invitations? Experiences, the spiritual smackdown, it's all a sacred invitation.
1000%. I want to share this story real quick because Jacqueline and I, we were just in mentorship and she was mentoring me. And I was going through my own, this is bringing us back to Uncensored and Energetically Free. That's where the title of this episode came in. And I had just been at an event and there were some people talking about the importance of stories. And I don't know if you relate to this, Jacqueline, but I have thousands of stories. I have had the biggest human awakening. I'm like, you know what I mean? And so it's like I forget some of them or I let some of them go or whatever. And there was this moment where I had, because the reason I'm bringing this up is because specifically Jacqueline was mentoring me and I'm literally in her frequency. And this is where it goes beyond the mind, it goes beyond the words. Because I'm in her frequency that she believes so powerfully in vulnerability, in sharing stories, in the wisdom that gets woven in these spaces. I was able to recognize where the biggest story of my life, like my spiritual smackdown, I call it a human awakening smackdown for myself, but I had just started kind of glossing over it. And so, because we were together, I dove into that a little bit more. This is the beauty of mentorship. And I was like, oh, I'm glossing over this because there's this narrative in the collective energy field that it should be censored. Like I should give a trigger warning for this story. So I think I just kind of stopped even opening up that field. I was like, well, that's over there, and I'm going to start telling these other stories. But that became so powerful, and we started exchanging about that. And that's where this title came in. And so you just offering this 3 books, like what? Like 3 books, boom, boom, boom. You offering this is offering other women to feel energetically the possibilities for them in this space of courage, in this space of truth, in this space of holy medicine. I love, love, love that you share that. So, how does that feel for you? And maybe you had something that came up for you when we were exchanging.
Yeah, well, this piece here, and like you said, and we had this experience together, like I believe at my core, like sharing our stories, sharing the truth of our lived experiences, that's how we come together in communion. That's what's healing collectively for us. And so this idea that who we are needs a trigger warning, or who, that my story's too shameful, like these are all illusions. These are all ideas that are man-made, that things need trigger warnings, that things are too shameful, that things can be anything other than truth that's shared to connect other women in the truth of their experience. And while someone might not have the exact same experience that I've had that I write about, while someone doesn't have the exact same experience that you've had as you speak about it, and whether it's you share it on a podcast or you write a book or however you share, it's not about having the exact same experience, but we connect. Like, oh, I haven't had that experience, but I've had that thought before, or I've had that doubt before, I've had that fear before. And again, that's where I feel like we really connect. And storytelling for me is at the heart of our leadership. And not being willing to share stories, like anyone can recite something that they've learned in a textbook. Like I have zero interest in being taught like that. I want to learn through others' lived wisdom and their sacred experiences here on this earth. And so I do believe that there is this like strong collective energy of allowing our voices to be heard, allowing our stories to be shared. I mean, this is why it went from 1 book to 3 books from someone who a year ago would have said, like, I am not a writer. And I was like, let's just get this book done so like it can be done and I can go back to like my normal life of what I do and not have to think about writing more books. And then the moment I wrote it was like, there's more here because there is more stories. There's more experienced wisdom that the way I feel about it is if I've experienced it, it's not just for me, it's for me and for you. And so my willingness to share allows it to impact you, it allows it to not just be about me. And that's what I really felt when you and I were in that mentorship space too, and you sharing this, it's actually not you sharing is not actually about you.
Mm. And I feel like the shift that's happening right now with the beautiful, coming together in balance of feminine and masculine energetics is that we're realizing that we have all of the capacity to feel in any moment. Like we have the discernment, we have the sovereignty, we have the capacity, and we no longer have to push it away or fear it. And that's where we can actually extract the wisdom when it's divinely coming to us instead of, creating a controlled space of like, okay, now I can actually move through this. Because that, I feel like that takes away from the power of it, the impact of it, the moment of it.
Like you are who you are today because of your experiences, because of your human experiences, because of what that's sparked for you and where that sparked you into your divine remembrance, no matter where you're at in your journey. But you are who you are right now because of your experiences. So to want to pretend that those experiences don't exist, especially those experiences, like I will tell you, there are many parts of this book that do not shine me in like the prettiest of the lights. And I'm a human being, as we all are. And so when we're willing to, I feel like when we're willing to share the lows and the highs, like the moments and the vulnerability, and to like really be in it with other women and to not be in that performance energy or needing to look perfect, gosh, the permission that we give to others to be fully who they are. That's what I'm here for.
Yes, moving out of that sisterhood wound of comparison and competition and really lifting each other up in all of it. So beautiful, Jacqueline. That feels like a great place for us to bring this this gorgeous transmission into being, right? Into
Oh
the
my
world.
gosh. Yes, thank you, thank you. And I do have one final thing I just want to say in essence
Yeah.
of that. Like this piece, like the more I'm willing to be who I am, I really feel like the more then you get to be who you are. And so like we get into that divine dance together. When I'm the truth of who I am, you're invited to be the truth of who you are. When you're the truth of who you are, I'm invited to be the truth of who I am. And we create such a, again, what we're putting out collectively in the energy field and frequency, it is in that frequency of freedom and sovereignty.
And then we build from love, which is what we all are at our core.
Absolutely.
Mm. Yes, Queen. Yes. Jack, thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you so much for being here. Let
Oh,
us know what's the release date of your book. Let everybody know where they can get a hold of you, how they can be in your frequency, in your field, because I'm like, invitation, like, get your butt there.
oh my gosh. Thank you so much. My book releases October 14th, and I will tell you, I never do things in conventional ways. And so if you feel the urge to come play there, if you feel the urge for my book, there's going to be something extraordinarily epic happening on the 14th that I'm giving to you beyond the book. And so come follow me on social media. Instagram is where I mostly am, Jaclyn underscore Shaw underscore. Have the conversations like let's dive deeper than this, and that's also where I'll share all the things that I have upcoming as well,
All on the Instagram.
all on the Instagram,
Okay.
all on the Instagram, and mark October 14th in your calendar because there's something epic happening that day.
Okay.
Outside of this, there's the epicness for me of my book being released that day, and I'm pairing it with something that's my gift to you on that day.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm already there. So I'm like, yes. But is there like, can people pre-order your book right now? Like, what's going on with this? Like, where can they get it? Like, is it all going to be through your Instagram where they can find this?
So we're not doing a pre-order because of what I'm doing on the 14th, because this like energy that I'm building for the 14th is beyond a pre-order thing. So it's really like Instagram is where all of the magic is gonna happen.
Y'all feel her frequency right now. Like you, if she's saying this and you're receiving it, you know it's going to be big. You've got to be there. I'm going to link anything below that she wants you to know about, especially her Instagram. And I'm giddy. I'm like levitating right now in my seat. Again, Jack, thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you for this divine conversation and just putting this out into the world and into the collective in the way that it has rolled out.
Oh my, thank you. It's been such an honor. Like literally, I feel like I could just have this conversation with you all day long. So thank you for being who you are in this world and for being willing to be the voice of truth that runs through you as well.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. All right, babes. Until next time, don't forget to keep looking up.